where do you think the model for jazz education is going? Do you think some changes should be made? This is such a subjective question and one that could go in a lot of directions and could get me in trouble. But what do I think about the direction of jazz education? I think that I was just talking to a student this week about this. I don't think it's totally sustainable the way that it is now, because the opportunities are limited for all the people that are interested in the music. And I think a lot of people get so into it and then they get turned off by something. And that could be a person, that could be a situation, that could be an institution that has, I don't know, very particular standards or very particular thing that they're looking for. And it's, you're not in the club, so you can't be here. This kind of thing. It's not inclusive. That doesn't really have to do with jazz education. That has more to do with jazz institutions and the kind of the culture of jazz and the culture of different generations within jazz. But there are plenty of people that are very welcoming and open and want to help young players. But like I said, there's only so many opportunities. So what I think needs to change is that I think there needs to be a wider base of economic opportunity for jazz musicians. And so jazz musicians need to broaden and diversify their opinion about what it is to be a jazz musician, meaning like it is also our job to talk about why it's important and show people why it's important and how it's interesting and why it's important art and what about the history of it is important. Sometimes we just want to stand in the corner and play our tunes, but we don't want to take on the role of being a leader within the arts and sharing why it's important. And it has to do with, I think, the way that jazz came about and the way that jazz was celebrated in the beginning as more of a pop music, and now it's become more of an art music, and that there's an unwillingness in the people that approach it from a more quote-unquote street music. They approach it like it is that still, and it's not embracing kind of reality. It's like looking at it through a lens of when it was something else. But since bebop, from what I can gather, at least from history books and talking to people, there's always been this schism between the jazz that's for something, like for dancing or for whatever, and then the jazz that's for the sake of music and art and all that. And it's the same with classical music, right? There is pieces written for operas, and there's classical music that's written for the sake of music or for the sake of like serialism or like some other little faction of music, or not even faction of music, but faction of like philosophy of art. So I think that jazz education needs to do a better job of setting people up to be advocates for the music and setting people up to be leaders within the music. Everyone wants to just play, or they just want to arrange, or they just want to compose, but people don't think about the fact that they need to build institutions, they need to build ensembles, they need to build representation of a culture of an area and allow it to really develop, as opposed to just like relying on other people that they're going to do it for them, or I don't have the money to do that or the resources. All these classical orchestras, some of them are having trouble, certainly, but like they found a way to get people together that care about the same thing and create an institution in a place that is representative of that place. The Chicago Symphony has a sound and it has a vibe and it has an approach and an opinion. The London Symphony, the same way. New York Phil has the same way. San Francisco, same way. So like in jazz, we have Jazz Lincoln Center, we have SF Jazz, and then what else? Colleges, which is fine, but we don't have a lot of like professional institutions other than maybe the military bands in DC that are being able to perpetuate the music. So we do need people that are setting themselves up to be leaders within the space that aren't only players. I'm not saying they shouldn't play, because they probably are also just like you and I that want to keep playing, but that it's an accepted kind of thing that they play and they do other things, and they can lead organizations and build something that allows us to share the important cultural relevance of jazz with the world. Because if we don't have those people, we'll just keep spinning our wheels.